Greetings. I am Tom Earl. Welcome to the celebration. We are grateful that you have joined us here today. You are valued, you are loved, and you are appreciated just as you are. Welcome to episode 4 of 4 with Wally B. Jennings. Wally, how are you?
I'm doing excellent, Tom. Thanks again for having me, man. This has been really, really great.
I appreciate that. We're recording August 2023, early August. Anything you want to share with the camera on before we go camera off?
Not at all. Looking forward to getting into it and continuing on with the great conversations we've been having.
All right, let's do it. Okay, so anything from these past episodes you want to speak to, bring up, anything coming up on your mind or heart that you wanted to have us jump into?
Not really. We've covered the gamut, man. I tell you, it's been exciting. Everything from Black cemeteries to fatherhood to life and depression, and yeah, it's been awesome.
Yeah, and this was you had commented on. I was going to ask you about the new format, so I'm happy to hear you are enjoying it. And I find there's something to that pausing every 30 minutes of like, okay, let's stop, let's refresh. Is this what else do we? I think that pause time is helpful as well.
What was it that encouraged the change for you?
So this would have been a year ago where I just was like, I wanted to re-examine everything I was doing in my business. The first one was I didn't like the product that I was selling, so I shut that down. And then I was like, all right, let's talk about this podcast. You've been doing this podcast now for 6 years. It takes a lot of work, takes a lot of energy. I'm not going to do things just because 6 years ago I said I was going to. Is it time to shut this thing down? Should I go down to 1 day a week? And what I really kind of set out is I wanted to do these like 10-part episodes where I'd cover a topic and weave in a bunch of different things. For example, I had found this phrase called a Pyrrhic victory, which is basically kind of like the victory took so much to win the victory that you end up ultimately losing. Like I'm seeing a picture here of a dog chasing something that it wants to eat off a cliff. So it's like, oh, you got the thing you want to eat, but in a couple seconds here, it's all going to be over. So I kind of had started to weave in a lot of things on that. And then I found then life just got busy and I was like, okay, I don't have the space in life to really put in. This is like a full-time job. So I was like, I want to keep this going, but I don't want to shut it down, but it's taking up too much time. And then I realized too that I'm really burnt out on interviewing because I'd research a guest, I'd bring them on, and I'd kind of find after like 5 or 6 minutes that they really talked about everything that they can talk about. So then I'd kind of, for the next 45 minutes, you'll never know which guest that was because I think I'm really good. But it was a lot of work. And I also realized, there's things that I want to share. And they're easier shared through a conversation. Like I try to do them just as solo episodes. And I found, there's something magical about a conversation. So then I was like, okay, I want to do conversations rather than interviews or solo episodes. And then I realized, and then the other big thing is these 2-hour episodes. I can't do a 2-hour episode for every week. So, and then the other thing is my wife refuses to listen to a podcast that's longer than 30 minutes. Oh, it's like, it'd be fun if my wife listened to one or two every now and again. So I was like, all right, let's do 30-minute episodes and let me bulk do them. So it's kind of like an evolution where I got together with somebody and it was like, okay, so if we get together for 2 hours, that's a month's worth of episodes in 2 hours, and I actually enjoy it. So it's kind of like a bit by bit kind of a thing that it kind of unfolded. And then really to have a conversation, I found it needs to be somebody that I actually know. So that was the other part, is like, okay, and then I can touch base with people that I genuinely would want to talk to, even if we weren't recording. So that was kind of that's been the evolution of it, if you will.
Yeah, it's been really cool, like being able to hear more of your thoughts and more of your feedback. And in this dynamic, I really love that.
Mm.
Really, really am enjoying
Thank
that.
you. I've also been trying to examine my relationship with creating content and social media and the internet, and trying to, as much as possible, not view my life through the lens of creating content. Because I used to, right? Like one of the big things was like, document your journey, and that is the content. So they're like, all right, I'm at the gym. All right, I'm doing this. All right, let me share my thoughts. All right, gratitude of the day, like all these kind of things. Let me take a picture with my wife, and it's like, even now, like the journaling workshop I do, which is kind of like an extension of the expression session, which you've been a featured poet for.
Yes.
I actually don't record them anymore. So there's no replay. And I find that there's something to, like, this is only going to happen now, and there will be no ability to listen back to it. This is just right now. And trying as much as I can to not view the experience I'm having through the lens of, if I turn this into content, will people like it? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. How do you reconcile, or how would you describe the relationship between like the content creation and art? As far as, do you see the content creation as an extension and as a form of your art?
Do you mind clarifying just a little bit? Just, I want to make sure I understand what you're asking. Do you mind clarifying
Sure,
a little, or speaking to your
sure.
own
So when
thoughts?
you
Or go
yeah,
ahead.
so yeah, so when you think about, this whole idea of what you've been able to do with expressions and even with the podcast and some of your work, it seems to be an extension of you as an artist. And I mean, that's the way that I see it. So that's, do you see this as an extension of your art?
When I came out here to California, like in Tampa, I think that I was a bit known. Like, I could go to an open mic and people would know who I was, and I think people liked my stuff. So I had some degree of success. And then I was like, all right, let me go to LA. And then I came out here, and people loved my poetry, but they didn't really love my music. And my music is really the art that I do want to do. So then I started kind of refining, and then I got my music to a place where I was like, I'm not, I haven't figured out the, like, I'm putting work. I kind of said it as, I'm not good enough to make a living off my music right now. So I need to focus on what's going to give me the most amount of money with the most amount of flexibility and time, so I can then do my music. And that's when I started my business. Started off as a leadership business, then business coaching, then ad agency, and I've kind of strategically put my art on hold while I was trying to figure out how to fund my art. And I've now gotten to this place right now where I'm ready to start creating music again, but I don't really have an interest in, like, it's a different intention. I used to be like, okay, let me create music that I like, but that I know people will like too. Like, there was like a split of like, what will people like and what do I like? But I think that it was kind of like, what do I like that people can consume? It was like viewed through the lens of the applause. And now I'm like, I want to write music that I'm not hearing for me. One of the things I do now for self-care is I do 8-hour hikes about once a week. So there's a lot of time there. So I'm like, I want to write like a 20-minute song that I can listen to while I'm hiking that kind of takes me to an emotional place that other music can't. And if other people like it, that's fine. But I guess there's like not this, there's no longer this need for recognition or success because I've tasted success and it was bitter. So it's like I don't really need those other things. I want to create because there's something I want to listen to that I haven't found yet. So I
Yeah,
don't really go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, because part of the reason why I asked that question is it's been interesting watching and experiencing the relationship with art change, and with not only within myself, but like watching other artists like kind of move into other things and seeing some of the remnants of their artistry, how it's almost like repackaged and reallocated in certain ways. So you can see kind of the influence of it. And so, yeah, that's, talk about challenging, man. Like one of the places and spaces that I'm in right now is that I'm being challenged to really redefine my relationship with poetry right now. And I'm really challenged with it because with poetry, I really worked at being a spoken word artist, like, with the writing, with the practicing and the performing and the, all of the things, right? So this whole prospect of being in a different place with my art and figuring out, okay, it may be time to put this down, or it may again look differently than it has, is it can be a really scary prospect. This past summer, my wife and I, we were actually cast in a national play. And so this whole, and in 2018, we did a play for the first time together, just, local company, and it went really well. And they had this project and they were like, hey, we really want to do this project. And when we do it, we really want y'all to be a part of it. And they're like, okay, cool. And so the end of last year, they were like, hey, remember that project we talked to you about? We're ready to do it. And we're actually going to launch it in Atlanta. It was like, whoa, okay. Like this is really happening. And so like to see again, this art kind of be repackaged and repurposed in a certain way it's been interesting. I tell you, it's been interesting. And so I see a lot of that, in my opinion and perspective, like with you, the traces of your artistic influence, even in shows like this. As somebody that has kind of seen you over the years, like it's really fascinating to kind of see some of those fingerprints on this.
I like that. And I think that was kind of what I was when I was talking a couple episodes ago. It was like my poetry, my music isn't my creativity. I'm applying my creativity to music and art. So my creativity I can apply to anything if I ask the questions of what does this look like to do this creatively? And I think that is, well, what does it mean to be creative? And I think that is like a spiritual tapping into something beyond how things have been done, tapping into beyond your rational, analytical intelligence. It's something that cannot be named in words. That's creativity. So I think me being like, oh, this podcast needs to be something different. Everything else after that becomes creativity. And I think that's like with my daughter, like how can I be creative in how we're going to use our Saturday together? And that creativity, it's the paradox. It's endless, it's infinite, it's timeless, and to bring it into this moment requires time. And we live in a timeless, infinite space, and time is measurable. So it's like the paradox of infinite being brought into the finite, infinite into the finite. So it's a strategic, how am I going to use this creativity? And while what I really just want to do is have a band and 9 to 5 we jam and then I go get my daughter from school, like that is not what the present moment is calling forth in how I'm going to apply my creativity. So I think that like, and this is kind of the first time I've said this out loud, which is creativity, is phrasing this, that coming to peace with that has kind of removed this, like what usually was there of this, like this hole where it's like, oh, but I should be creating music. That's how I'm going to change the world. That's going to be my activism. That's how I'm going to be fulfilled. And that was kind of a part of the mourning, is it's like, that might not happen till you're in your 80s and you have to be okay with that. But the creativity that you have is bigger than any visual, auditory, written art. Like your creativity is applied to that. That is not your creativity.
I don't know if I ever told you the story, but the first time I heard your name, like the first time anyone ever said like Tom Earl, I think it was Liz. And she asked if she said your name like I knew you and I didn't know you. And the first time I heard your name, I was like, that's a musician's name. Like that absolutely is a musician's name. Like it is, yeah.
Yeah. Spoken word was really just, I graduated and I was like immediately lost. My major was African diaspora studies, and there was nothing like the classrooms that would pull together people of all ages. Just it was awesome. And then when I graduated, it's like, that's done. There's no spaces like that where people are wrestling with these things that are a part of my everyday life. So then I was like, oh, what's going on in this room? Oh, spoken word. All right. To be a part of the conversation, you got to write spoken word. I'll give that a shot. And it just kind of snowballed. And it's built many wonderful relationships. And I think that's the creativity, is trusting like, okay, this is what I'm looking for, and being open to like, all right, what's in this room? But yeah, hopefully, not hopefully, I know eventually I feel like so many of the things that I have done are going to make sense when I finally am gifted with the time in my life where God's like, all right, now you can do music again. It's like, yay. Like, so many things I've been trying to say, I think, will make sense through the language of music. But until that day, I'm gonna keep it's really like that Miles Davis quote of it took me years to learn how to play like myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really the work of like, who are you? No, like, who really are you? Like, I think the more I ask myself that question, the more the line between my creativity and trying to get into the world becomes thinner and thinner, where like channeling becomes more and more the default.
Yeah, part of our life's work seems to be discovering who we really are.
Mm.
You know, seems like that's a major part of our life's work.
I think another thing, if folks are listening to this who are trying to build a business or get your music out there, this is going to sound like a little bit of a downer, but the golden age of social media has passed. When it was like 2014, 2015, honestly, anything before 2016, there was an ability to organically create a following and an audience without having to be that skilled, that you could kind of make some money off of it. And Cambridge Analytica, Trump becoming president, the Russian bots, all of that changed so much that is really hard to name unless you've been in the weeds. And where we are from then to now, content has really become like all the content that you see if you're watching TikToks or you're watching Instagram Reels, which I think is a lot of where people are spending their time. That's like 15-second content. You're really almost exclusively watching viral content. Like it's rare that you're going to see something that has like 100 views or likes. So to just even get noticed by new people, for the most part, it has to reach some sort of viralness. And to do that, you can kind of tap into like, well, what are the things that jar people? What are the things that stimulate people? What are the things that are kind of like, once again, these ends justify the means? You're gonna find yourself being changed by, okay, when I put out content like this, it seems to get noticed. It's that leaning into that will change you. And I think it'll change you in ways that you're not going to like. And here's the kicker: you're going to end up rich in followers, and that's it. I can't tell you how many people I've worked with that have the followers we all thirst for, and they're living paycheck to paycheck. Ultimately, unless you're like the 0.003% that when I was growing up, it's like, if you want to become a famous musician, you're like less than 1% chance of that happening where you're at a coffee shop and someone's discovered you. I really feel like we're kind of back to that. If you're going to become viral just on your own talents, it's like less than 1% of people have that skill. I don't have that skill. So your other option is, well, then you can do prank videos. You can look sexy. You can serendipity go famous. You know, something happens where somebody records you doing something and it goes famous. But that stuff doesn't really translate to money.
Right.
But really what it is now is, if you want to be able to make money on the internet, you need to be able to pay for ads. And ads have gotten to the point where you're really looking at entry level. You should be able to spend about $5,000 a month. But really, I find that where you start making money is when you can spend about $20,000 to $30,000 a month on ads, which for 98% of us, you're either going to do as a loan, credit card debt, or you're just not going to be able to do. So really, I think we have to go back to the beginning, that your customers, whether that's as a musician or as a business, your customers are going to be the people you know, like you actually know. And then your next customers are going to be the people that they know, that they like you so much they're willing to bring to the table. That right there is really, I think, if you're trying to build a business or an artistry, that's where you should focus on. And if none of the people you know want to buy your stuff, a stranger's not going to buy it either. Like this belief that, like, if only I could get in front of the right audience. They don't even have a reason to like you. The people who have a reason to like you don't even want your stuff. So it really becomes it's not there yet. And that's just, all of what I'm saying are very tough things to swallow, because the internet gives us this illusion of like, if only I could just get in front of the right audience, I'd finally make money. And it really doesn't work like that unless you're willing to pay to educate people on how dope you are. But that's really expensive, and more or less you usually break even for years. So you're spending 30,000, you're making 30,000. You're spending 30,000, you're making 30,000. Just like all these tech companies, like Uber didn't make money for years. Like it takes years and years and years, and then you spend 30, you make 35. You spend 30, you make 40. But I don't know about you, but most people I know don't really have that kind of line of credit or safety net to spend $30,000 and hope you break even every month.
Yeah, last year I read a book called The Icarus Deception by Seth Godin. And it's a really fascinating book. It essentially breaks down the transition from the industrial age to the digital age. And so, and as you mentioned, it's fascinating watching the dismantling of like big businesses, even before COVID, before the economic downturn in the early 2000s, you started seeing kind of, the rumblings of big businesses kind of falling, with the institution of food trucks, and really going back to this whole idea of entrepreneurship. And it's interesting what you mentioned, because although again, it's that the digital aspect, the digital age obviously isn't going anywhere, but the way that we go about using it and really getting back to the basics on some things that were a part of the industrial age is what we're going back to. So this is not a shifting from the digital age at all, but it is an incorporation of a lot of those qualities and things that we've seen previously, just like you said, of kind of that one-to-one connecting with people that know you, like just really having not just you can't just have hype. You got to have a good product. You can't just have a good product too. You got to have good service. Those types of things of building a book of business of individuals that are going to refer you, like getting back to word of mouth again. So it's just really interesting to see how all of these things kind of play in together and what the future is going to potentially look like.
Yeah, Seth Godin's great. One thing you brought up for me, I think, is a misconception too. Is it's like the food truck industry, say that, or like somebody like Quick and Nimble, disrupting like a huge chain like McDonald's, or like these behemoths that take, their challenge is it's so hard for them to be nimble because there's so much fear and change to the people, like their stock, their shareholders, all that kind of stuff. But I think what can get a little challenging is when we start to think that we're going to disrupt them by earning close to what they do, right? It's like, okay, I'm going to be quick and nimble, and then I'm going to make millions. And I think that's where things start to get a little foggy. I think if you have a small business, if you're an artist, if you can start to net like $5,000 to $6,000 a month, like net after expenses, I think that's the equivalent of being a millionaire. But I think a lot of people imagine making it looks like $100,000 a month. And the people who are making $100,000 a month are, for the most part, unless they're extraordinarily gifted, they're spending about 80 to 100K to make that. And I think that's like the side of entrepreneurship and artistry that a lot of people aren't kind of pulled back the curtain, is how much money your hero is spending to create the image of how successful they are. Like, it takes so much money to earn so much money that you're still, even if your business is making, like, there's people I've worked with where their business was making $2 million a month, but because of their expenses to make that, they're living the paycheck to paycheck like most of us. It's just They now have the headache of a $2 million a month business. So I think being nimble, being lean, having as little expenses as possible, a little overhead as possible, then when any money you make, you actually get to keep. So
yeah, that's a pretty astute observation regarding that investment piece. It's and that's something that we hear often about the investment of time, but the investment of resources in order to acquire more resources, or the investment of capital to obtain more capital, is something that you don't necessarily hear a lot of. So it's this idea that investing time into it is going to eventually yield you the capital, but yeah, that reinvestment of the capital is an important part of it. Yeah, that's big.
Because if you have any sort of staff, you're spending any money on ads, let's say you're spending $10,000 a month on your business, one bad month, you're now $10,000 in the hole. And that can be hard to climb out of. So I think that's the part that's hard, is it's like it becomes a gamble, right? I'm going to spend 30. And even if you're making 30 every month, all you need is a war in the Ukraine. All you need is inflation. All you need is stimulus money running out, for all of a sudden 2 bad months in a row, you're now in the whole 60 grand. And being in the whole 60 grand for a business is it can become almost impossible to come out of.
Wow.
Well, these are some of the things that I have had to experience the past 10 years. So hopefully this is something to chew on for all of us.
Yeah, no, that's definitely one to grow on. As I was, I definitely one to grow on.
Well, I know that you have a hard stop, and we are approaching that time. So we've passed it by 3 minutes. So Wally, why don't you share, shamelessly self-promote, and then while I'm shamelessly self-promoting, why don't you think through, what do you want your final thoughts, your reflections, and then of course your final invitation to be?
Yeah, so as always, you can visit me at walterwallybjennings.com, on Facebook, Walter Wally B. Jennings, and on Instagram, Wally B. Jennings. Also, be sure to visit us at Chosen Life Specialists. Chosen Life Specialist specializes in individual and couples counseling and would love to speak and meet with you about your individual and collective journey. And again, that's chosenlifespecialist.com, where we have been called to challenge and change individual and relationship culture. And lastly, for those of you that are interested and have listened to the previous podcast regarding the Black and African American cemeteries around the nation that have been abandoned and that have been forgotten about, please visit us at blackcemeterynetwork.org for more information.
Yes, indeed. Please check out all of Wally's links. And honestly, y'all, there are so many people out there who just have slapped the, coach title when they're faking it till they make it. When you work with Chosen Life Specialists, it's the real deal. And it's been the real deal for decades. I remember when I ran into you when we were hosting Southern Fried in Ybor City, and I was with a poet, and I was like, because you were one of the people helping, I was like, oh man, Wally, this poet's struggling. So you stepped in and you helped, and then you said to me that you're not here to develop the art, you're here to develop the artist. And that mentality is exactly what I know y'all bring to Chosen Life Specialists. It's about cultivating you, the person. So I really recommend y'all check it out and work with Wally and Wally's partner. Okay. For me, I host a journaling membership called the Direct Connect Method, where we really explore making that creative place, that burst of inspiration, that you can go there consciously rather than it being this kind of the muse striking you, that you are the muse. So we do that through process-oriented journaling, reflection, and conversations, being a part of a community where you feel like you belong. Check us out, tomearl.me/DCM invite. All right, Wally, what's any last reflections? And then, of course, your invitation.
Yeah, just thank you, Tom, as always, again, for providing me with the platform for us to have these discussions. You're a person that, again, over the years, I really consider myself fortunate to call you a friend, a think partner, again, an advocate for the work that I'm doing. And my hope and pray that that I advocate for you and really appreciate the work that you're doing. And so, that's definitely my reflection. And everyone under the sound of my voice, please continue to support Tom and his efforts as far as even with this podcast. Recommend it to somebody. If these conversations and some of these shows have been a benefit to you, that water cooler talk, it's real. When we sit around and talk about, hey, watch this show or check out this series or, check out this podcast, be sure to recommend what Tom Earl is doing to the individuals that can benefit from it. And my invitation is, again, to continue to explore who you are as far as in your quest in life, no matter what it is that you're purposing to accomplish and do. Make sure that you are not losing yourself in the pursuit of things. Make sure that you are not forsaking who you are, your values and your principles, and the search of self in substitution for just stuff. Make sure that you are about the business of discovering who you are and loving yourself in the process of it.
Wally, I am grateful for and I received the affirmation that you shared. It means the world to me. It's wonderful how life and our intentions and God has continued to connect us now for 2011, about when we met. So we're looking at good 12 years. Wow. 12 years of being connected. And I look forward to another 12 years from now, us looking back on this and saying, wow, look what 20's done, and the lessons that we'll draw from that together. I'm in your corner. I'm here. You ever need anything, I'm here for you. And I appreciate you.
Maktab.
To those of you listening, my invitation is to cultivate your own taste beyond what you feel like should be your taste. If there's music you listen to that you turn down when you're at the traffic light so no one knows that you actually do like this, if there's food, if there's movies, books, people you want to hang out with that you feel like people would laugh at you for hanging out with, if there's ideas you have that you feel like if people in your life knew, they would shun you, if there's goals you have, inclinations that you're a little embarrassed by, I invite you to start to embrace, because if there's one thing I've found is that it's your weird is your magic. So whatever you've maybe felt a little weird for or weird about, or your weird tendencies, I want you to start to own those and lean into those, because I'm telling you, it's the magic. The things that you've always felt like were weird about you, that is your magic. That's what no one else has but you. So cultivate a relationship with that. All right. Well, I don't want to say goodbye. I don't want it to end, but we're going to. Wally, I appreciate you.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate you, sir.
Of course. To all those who are listening, as always, we're wishing you peace and blessings. Thank you.
One more thing. I'd love to continue the conversation. Feel free to join me at tomearl.com/join. Subscribe below, or let's connect on social media. Tom Earl Artist. Thanks again for watching.